Please take your seats. The program is about to begin. Please welcome to the stage Bloomberg anchor and reporter Janet Wu.
some of you who use Bloomberg, you might recognize that amazing voice, Charlie Pellet, who's the voice of the New York City subway, and we adore him. It's so great to see you in person. Good morning, whether you're joining us virtually from around the world or in person here in Boston. We are so delighted to be with you. I'm Janet Wu, a Bloomberg anchor and reporter based here in Boston, where I interview the CEOs, the investors, the innovators, and the entrepreneurs of this innovation hub. We hear their ideas as well as their challenges every single day. And I'm so excited to host this presentation on intelligent automation, creating the workforce of the future. Advances in technology have permanently changed the way we think about our workforces, and the pandemic added seismic shifts to how work is now getting done. From mass relocations to mass resignations to massive changes in work processes, the future of work now looks very different than it did even just 2 years ago. Among the topics we will explore today, the changing nature of work, how organizations are applying intelligent automation to face labor shortages and drive efficiency. We'll also take a look at what kind of work can be automated and how data skills can benefit employees, and how advances in automation can improve workforce operations and profitability. We do have a lot to learn together, including how, and I find this word still a little scary, how the metaverse will transform how we work, where we work, and what jobs will even exist in the future. Before we get started, a few items for all the virtual attendees joining us today from around the world. If you have any problems with your audio or video quality, first just try refreshing the browser. You can also use the chat box at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen to reach support. And I am happy to tell you that we have partnered with Listen, which is an audio-to-text platform, which is transcribing this conversation in real time to make this event more accessible. You can access Listen for that real-time transcription via the link in the session description. And we do want to hear from you all today. So please engage with us on social media. You can use the hashtag #IntelligentAutomation. And you can also engage with all the incredible people in this room. If you can talk to them in person, of course, but you can also use the chat function on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. Now, I would like to acknowledge our sponsor today, IBM, and please give a warm welcome to Bill Lobig, IBM's Vice President for Automation Product Management.
Thanks, Janet. Hey, everyone. How's it going? How's it feel to sit next to each other without a mask? First time I've ironed a shirt in a long time and I'm not wearing my pajamas. Listen, thanks everyone for coming out. This is an amazing attendance. We had to wheel in some more chairs from the back. I took a picture of that. Thank you for joining us to talk about intelligent automation in the future of work. So who am I? My name is Bill Lobig. I'm the Vice President of Product Management at IBM, leading our IBM automation business. And what do? I help people get more done with their time to be more effective. And I've worked in automation for a number of years. I've done some other things along the way, but automation has been around much longer than any of us have. Really, automation has been around since the evolution of humans and the creation of the wheel to get around faster, printing presses to distribute information and knowledge so we could all collaborate and learn from each other and share. Boats and planes, these are a form of automation to connect people, to bring diverse cultures and perspectives together so that we can be better as a whole. Just so happens, today's contemporary problems are pressing and accelerating the need for automation. And those go across 3 dimensions as I see them. The first is the great digital shift. COVID really forced this point and forced everyone to think about automation and digitization. I have the wonderful opportunity to meet with a lot of clients, and I'll tell you, those that relied on manual human processes, a lot of their businesses went to zero. Those that thrived, they were prepared to operate in a disconnected and remote world. The other is increasing complexity in IT systems and applications. I like to keep up on a lot of analyst reports and studies, and IDC in particular. I was reading one that said in the next 5 years, there'll be over 500 million new applications created. 500 million, it's a huge number, right? Even if it's off by an order of magnitude, call it 50. The IT organizations in your enterprises, they can't handle this complexity, this workload, and when a move to hybrid cloud, where you're moving to hyperscalers, you've got workloads on premise, you're trying to port these things around, it's increasingly burdensome. And lastly, and I think most importantly, is the great resignation, wage inflation, skills shortage. I don't know about you all, but when I first started to see this in the news, it was like, oh, it's the service industry, you don't want to go back, got the stimulus money. This is very real. I mean, IBM's a software company, I see it. Salaries are sky high, and even if you can pay them and afford them, it's hard to attract the talent. And I'd venture to say all of you are technology companies, and if you're not, you should be, because everyone should be using technology as a competitive differentiator, no matter what you do, banking, finance, retail, otherwise. So all of this is happening while organizations such as yourself are trying to increase your top line, reduce your costs, provide amazing and reinvented customer experiences, and I think most importantly, improve human productivity. Because without that, none of the others are possible. So one of the things we're doing at IBM, just to give you a little teaser, is we're focused on automating people, business systems, business processes, and systems. We want to help people be their best selves. Think of all the time you spend in your day. How much of that work is truly oriented at achieving your compass or your North Star or what your boss expects you to do? I was doing some thinking leading up to this, and I thought, what if you could save 1 hour per day? Just one. It's not much, right? If you could save 1 hour per day for a year, that's over 6 weeks of time. What would you do with that time? What could you do with that time? The other thing that is really important to enable people is to digitize your business systems. Digitize your business processes, your workflows, your manual interactions, your business rules, your documents, your IT systems. And the third is around digitizing systems. These days, I like to think of everything that goes into providing an amazing customer experience, from that click on the website or that internal employee portal, as your application supply chain. Every virtual machine, every bare metal, every network device, every whatever that goes, database, apps, it goes into providing that ultimate experience is a supply chain to deliver amazing client application experiences in that IT supply chain, that application supply chain. And like a normal supply chain, one that we suffered from with all the boats parked off the ocean in California, is you need it to be expedient, resilient, streamlined, and timely. And so we're helping organizations optimize their costs, reduce compute density, and provide amazing uptimes and service level agreements. So it's just a bit about how we're thinking about it. We welcome you all here today. We look forward to the sessions. My ask of you, as you attend the breakouts and the different sessions today, is really think about how you can apply automation to create automations, apply automation technology to create automations that make you more productive, not just for your business, but for you as an individual and a person. So I hope everyone has a great day. Welcome back to in-person. Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage KeyBank's Chief Information Officer, Amy Brady, along with Boston Scientific's Senior Vice President of Global Supply Chain, Brad Sorensen, for a conversation with Bloomberg Intelligence's TMT Team Lead, Senior Analyst, and host of Tech Disruptors, Mandeep Singh.
Great. Is mic on? Good morning, everyone, and thank you all again. Very excited to see everyone in person and also welcome the virtual audience that we have today. So let's kick it off. I think Bill did a great job of setting the stage in terms of what the agenda is about today, and really we've come a long way in terms of just how digital transformation has been perceived as something that's strategic for every company out there. And I think this panel, really excited to have Amy and Bill, given your diverse kind of industry experience, and just maybe we can kick off with defining automation. And Amy, I think I would request you to go first. Like, how do you think about automation within your enterprise, a big bank like KeyBank? What is automation for you?
Sure, and thank you, and it's great to be here, and I guess I get to ladies first, right? That's
Sure, fire away.
the opportunity. Let me just real quickly say, in my role at Key as CIO, I also have responsibility for all of our back office operations, our contact centers, so all of our servicing centers. So anything that you think about once you open an account, whether it's consumer or commercial, everything that's behind that, right? So automation is really, really important to me, both from a technology side, but also how do we make our processes more digital, more seamless, easier to use, starting with the client and how the client interacts with the financial institution all the way through to the back end, so front, middle, back office. So when we think about automation, we think about it in many ways the way Bill just talked about it. It's anything that can take manual tasks out of the process, right? And you can use a whole bunch of different technologies to do that, but it is predominantly used in our case to either make the client experience better or the employee journey easier to support our clients, right? Across all of our processes. And we started our journey back in 2019 and have accelerated the use of a myriad of tools to drive significant impact across our processes, which I know we'll get into.
Yeah.
But I think of automation very broadly in how we can apply it.
Brad, do you want to build on that?
Yeah, that's great. I mean, thank you for having us. In my world, not only we make life-saving medical devices, and not only does that mean we have high-tech products, we need to be a high-tech company. And I really think about automation in my world through the context of whether that helps us make product, or move the data around. And so it touches just a whole variety of those aspects and really interconnects them in a way that really helps us serve our patients more effectively.
Great. So I guess one of the things that keeps coming up when you think about automation is complexity, right? Mm-hmm. So it's one thing to automate like the manual tasks that everyone knows can be easily done by a computer or a robot, but it's another thing to think about complexity and that human experience. So how do you kind of apply that filter in terms of this is a good task to be automated, or how do you think about allocating your budgets? Because there are plenty of things where you can apply this concept of automation.
I would start with when we started our journey, it was back after the hype of RPA and automation is going to eliminate all these jobs. I don't believe that, by the way. I think all of these tools help us eliminate tasks, which then you can restructure roles and functions. But I have yet to see in our journey where it's eliminated an entire job. So I put that out there. Secondly, I think when we started, we went with some of the low-hanging fruit. And we all have it. And if you look at your companies, you will have processes where there are tasks that you go, oh my goodness, there's a high volume there, and you can just automate from A to B. Once you get through that, though, the really important part, we have found the secret sauce, is getting process design engineers with subject matter experts, with these automation engineers, and those three things together working at a process end to end. You just don't want to automate processes that are inefficient today and make them faster and more inefficient. That's not necessarily a great outcome. So I think putting all those things together, again, talking about the human element of what's happening, creates this engagement from the people in the value chain so that they don't feel so threatened by what's happening either.
Yeah, and Brad, in your case, I guess the margin of error when you are talking about medical equipment is very minimal. You can't afford to have any sort of even a small error in how you are thinking about automation, and that can have a huge impact, both on the upside and downside. So how do you think about proof of concepts when you are thinking about automation, and how much due diligence do you have to do in that?
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right? I mean, the margin of error is virtually zero, that we're making a device that if it doesn't fire when your heart does something strange, you're going to die. That's the way it works. So as we think about automation, interestingly, as Amy's talking, right, we used to think about it in replacement of tasks and what's the ROI in that, et cetera. Now we really think about it from a perspective much more on how can it improve the quality of our product? Because humans are great. Things like human visual inspection, humans are great, but they are not flawless. And the right automation solutions can be flawless. They don't get fatigued, they don't get tired. They can learn, can start to identify not just a good and bad from a library of good and bad, but actually start to become more intelligent. But as we think of proof of concept, it is really through the lens of trying to break it. We need to try to break it out of the gate and assure ourselves that it can't break. And ROI has become kind of an interesting secondary concept, but not the primary driver for us.
I agree with that.
Maybe, Amy, like, can you talk about some of the tools that you use within your company and which are new in the sense that COVID really expedited the deployment of some of those tools where you not only applied it successfully, but also you could see the ROI, and I think it would be interesting.
Sure, and clearly we don't make life-changing medical equipment, so we don't have to go that far, but people do get a little passionate about their money. And you actually want what money you deposit, or if you're getting a loan from an institution or you're investing, you actually want it to work. So we have to have a pretty high quality rate too. Look, the pandemic, we've all talked about this, it clearly changed the way all of us are looking at the uses of technology and cross-industry, right? And interesting being in a financial institution, you serve every industry, so you could see it. But clearly the way people want to interact with their financial institution, the consumer was already on this kind of high slope of, hey, it has to be as easy as my favorite app on my phone. But we weren't there with our commercial clients as much. So I want to take you through very quickly when the government launched the Payment Protection Program, which was the PPP program for all of our businesses in the country. Every bank was starting gate at the same time. We had to be able to take loan applications. And I was commenting that the SBA, which processed all of this, was not capable at the time of taking anything but hard signatures. Well, you can't get a hard signature when everybody's locked down. You had to go to digital signatures. So a simple thing like digital signature is a form of automation, which our commercial lenders had resisted that because they always wanted to sit down with a person, say, I need to be there to help that client. But all of a sudden, you couldn't do that. And now we have found that application of digital signatures pervasive, right? So we were able to look at every place across our institution that takes a physical signature and start to apply that. But when you really just look at that, you go, wait, look at the whole process. And so the whole process changed. We were able to use our technologies and our automation to process 46,000 loan applications and produce $11 billion of relief into our clients and our neighborhoods and our communities. We're about the 13th, 15th largest bank in the United States. Through our automation efforts and through our technology, we produce the third highest number of loans for the country in that process. And that's all through using those techniques of understanding the process and applying tools, whether it be the automation anywhere or whether it be things like reading documents, so OCR technologies or the digital signature technologies. But if you apply them all together, you can truly re-engineer processes in a way that can have tremendous impact.
So just to piggyback on that, what did it mean in terms of training or reallocating some of the human jobs to some other type of jobs that they had to train for?
Yeah, I mean, that is an example of, we were under pressure and obviously there was no way you could hire enough people to process that manually in that short period of time, right? But today we probably have enough automation running where we're probably okay to about 400 FTE equivalent across these tasks. It does mean retraining people. It also means over time, in our case, if you're a services industry and you're not manufacturing something, it means restructuring some roles. because all of a sudden maybe 25 or 30% of their tasks are now eliminated and they've got that capacity. So what do you do with that? So you have to upskill your employees. And that's a good thing. That's a great message. This fear of my operations folks or the contact center folks saying your jobs are going away, we've gotten way past that. They look to, okay, how are you going to make my job easier? How do you make it easier to onboard me? Because now I can learn all of these things with the intelligent assist versus me having to really learn them all. So I think there's all these applications you have to think about depending on what industry you're in and what opportunity you're trying to solve.
Brad, there is this notion that robots are going to take away a lot of the manufacturing jobs.
Yeah.
So given, if you manufacture such high-end equipments, like how much of robotics you were using prior to COVID, and what has changed over the last 2 years?
Yeah, I'd really like to follow on what Amy said, because it's the same, but it's different, right? Different space, but same issue. Pre-COVID, yes, we were automating using robots and really trying to replace tasks that either were not efficient or there was a cost benefit. But our ability to hire, recruit, bring in enough people to actually serve our business, that's become almost an existential threat for us. And so the acceleration of how we use automation, robotics, human visual inspection, augmentation, artificial intelligence to get to learning computers in this space has just accelerated dramatically for us. And similarly, what we've really done in parallel, which I think has been part of our magic, is kicked off some very aggressive initiatives with respect to what we call our direct labor, our product builder population, right? 20,000 people worldwide, on improving their skill sets, growing their careers within Boston Scientific. Because if your livelihood is based on looking through a microscope and determining whether a product is good or bad, and we say we've got a piece of automation here, we've got some capability that can get rid of that or can improve your capabilities, or improve this process. We want all that knowledge that's in your head. We just don't want you to be looking through a microscope. We want you to be helping craft how that automation should work so that it can make better decisions. And so we really have moved toward getting automation that augments people, not replaces people.
I agree.
So then how do you go about training those robots in terms of helping them learn, what it needs to be done better, or the next version of the equipment?
Yeah, well, that is part of the, now look, I'm no deep IT expert here, but I can tell you that is one of the real benefits we've seen of the technological advancement, is that equipment is able to learn, right? So historically you had to, if we're talking about, say, visual inspection, you had to create a library of good, bad, and a piece of equipment could determine. Now, even just in the last couple years, automation has learned, it can learn. It can start to say, well, if this is good and this is bad and that's something different, I can figure out whether it's good or bad, just like a human can. And I would say we actually augment automation with humans to validate that, yeah, it's making the right decisions for a while. And then just like as you're training someone, once you figure out it actually is making the right decisions, then we can let it go on its own.
Yeah, that's great. So Amy, when we talk about automation and digital transformation, there's a lot of data being created, and that comes with its own set of problems. Does it have you worried that you've got so much data, and we're talking about sensitive customer data here? How do you go about thinking about all the vulnerabilities that can come with automation and more data that you're storing, and how you are sharing that data, privacy, all those aspects that come with it?
Okay, we could talk about this for about 5 hours, because that's a lot in one question. And so let me just, I'll pull it up for a moment and say, as someone who runs technology and operations and services, I feel like my job is to help digitize the enterprise from front to back. Is to constantly be challenging, how are we making more automation But to have really powerful digital journeys, they all have to be powered by analytics and data, right? The bots can't do things if they're not intelligent. Our employees can't be effective if they don't have the data at their fingertips and delivered to them in a way that they can act on it. So I think data and analytics is the fuel for any digital effort. And it has to be working together, or you're going to have really pretty front ends that are dumb. I mean, it may look good to your client in our case, but it won't do anything to the back, in the middle office, in the back office, right? And it won't learn. So I think that is really, really important. That in and of itself is a competency that most companies have to work on developing, is the data and analytics side of things, and how do you leverage that to have impact and deliver value for your company or your clients. So that's one effort. Then you talk about protecting all of that, and this does, in all of our cases, depending on where you're deploying the automation and the type of tools, and on top of what technologies, it does potentially increase your attack surface for different cyber events or vulnerabilities. And so you also better be upskilling your information security, cyber security teams, your DevOps teams, DevSecOps teams, to make sure that as they are developing, they're considering all of this into the design. But then I also agree that some of this robotics can take out some risk, of manual intrusions, if you will, or manual defects that can also lead to issues. So it certainly doesn't make your environment from a technical perspective less complex. It actually makes it more complex. And you have to know where that automation is deployed, because when you change a process, you have to re-educate the bots. Now, they learn faster than maybe 1,000 employees do, but you still have to know they're there, and you still have to know that if you don't, the process will break. So I think there's all of that you have to be really careful with as you deploy. But as you get better at it, you can see how you get faster at using these tools and more effective.
Brad, what are the points of vulnerability, and can the robots be hacked?
Well, I mean, look, just everything can be hacked. But I mean, I think historically we used to think about security really through the lens of like physical security, right? A tornado, a hurricane, something like that, right? A major breakdown in supply chain. And all kinds of redundancy, resiliency in place for that. We now certainly have added to that at a much higher level. How do we think about cybersecurity, right? So we've got segmented networks that can, they're separate, but it requires a lot of focus and diligence. I spent a lot of time talking about this and thinking about what barriers do we need to put in place? How do you segment data? Because the benefit of having all of this data available is we can make better decisions if everybody can access it. The downside of everybody being able to access it is you got to figure out how do you keep only the people you want to be able to access it have availability of it. And so, as Amy said, right, we could spend hours, and I do spend hours talking about these things, but it just requires a different way of thinking that now I have to protect this data as an asset, not just a physical location or employees or IP or whatever.
Yeah, Bill touched on a very interesting point around talent. So I want to make sure I get your views on that. As a CIO, what do you look for in terms of the talent for the future and the jobs for the future, and where do you find them?
So we all read about it, the war for talent, the great resignation, all that stuff out there. And it's real, right? We all see it. So I think you have to have a really strong talent strategy. And part of our strategy is not just to acquire, although we do acquire talent for new skills and new emerging skills, and people and young talent coming out of universities, et cetera. But you also have to grow your talent and make a commitment to that. And I think with automation, it's a great place to do it. And so I'll give you an example. We launched a program we call Tech Ready, where we really targeted our internal operations and internal contact center teammates who are entry-level jobs, who on average are making, let's say, $20 an hour. And we targeted that population to say, here's an opportunity for you to grow your career. We will pay for you to go through this program. They have to go through a battery of assessments to make sure they have the aptitude to acquire the technical skills. But they all know our processes. they come from roles that understand and they're living and working in these processes, and quite frankly, they're the ones that feel the pain points the most. And so by taking them and teaching them technologies, now we're able to produce a whole cohort and then put them right into these automation technologies, which quite frankly are a little bit easier to start with. But that goes back to that secret sauce of saying, if you know the business process and you have a process engineer and you have a robotics engineer who knows the tools, we're able to grow our talent, and they're coming out of these programs and hitting the ground running because they're helping to re-engineer the processes they just came out of. And so it's a win-win-win. We're developing the technical talent of the future. We're changing their lives because we're able to compensate them in different ways as an entry-level engineer than they may have been, and we're able to grow the talent. So that's just one example where I think you have to get really creative in today's shortage of available talent. You also have to restructure your roles. You can't have every talent requiring 20 years of technical experience. So you have to restructure your tech roles to say, how do you bring on new talent and coach them and grow them?
Brad?
So I'd just like to start off. Amy and I have never met each other before. Just this morning. We didn't practice this. But what she said, I mean, ditto. We actually kicked off a program we called Grow. And it's the similarities are eerie. It is entry level, whether that is direct labor, technicians, or engineers, very much down the same path, right? People that understand how the work gets done. We have created a number of cohorts across the globe, upskilling these folks, and not just upskilling like we're going to train you a new job, but bringing them through more business training, financial training, a number of technical decision-making cohorts to really change the way that they are thinking about their work, because that creates then, one, loyalty. These people's lives truly, I came in to do this job, which is a paycheck, and now I have a career. And how we are leveraging automation and the evolution of that job is part and parcel of what is driving their long-term career growth. But you've got to do these things in parallel. I think if you think about automation or digitization as a replacement for people, you've got a losing scenario, because people will look at that and say, great, today my job might be safe, but the second the organization figures out how to replace me, they will. If people start to see, hey, if I get plugged into this, it actually grows my career, people will embrace automation, they will pull automation, they will seek out opportunities to make their jobs more efficient because it's directly connected to their career growth.
Final word, Amy, how will banking look like 5-10 years from now as a result of all the automation?
I hope it's easier for all of you to bank with Key and our institution. You're welcome to open your accounts, whether you are individual or a corporation. And seriously, that's our job, is to use all these technologies to make it easier, frictionless for our clients. And so 5 years from now, I think you have a more efficient, more effective institution that is delivering exceptional quality to our clients, irrespective of what continuum they're on in their life cycle.
Brad, are we going to live longer 5-10 years from now?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. I think the quality of our products is the price of entry for us, but our ability to deliver with speed and be more flexible and responsive to customer needs, that curve is just incredibly aggressive, and you should be fine. I'll give you my card if you can give me a call.
All right, I think that's all the time we had. I want to thank my panelists, Amy and Brad, and looking forward to the upcoming sessions. Thank you all.
Thanks.
Thank you. Good job.
Please welcome to the stage Horizon View Services founder George Warner in conversation with IBM's Bill Lobig, Vice President of IBM Automation Product Management.
All right. Nobody's left yet, so we're doing good so far.
They locked the doors.
Yeah. So I'm here with George Warner, who's the Director of Information Technology at the State of New York, and we've had a really great time together really solving some important problems for not only the government and the social work, but people. And when I think about automation, I'm a product guy. When I think about it, I think in the abstract to an extent. I want to help people spend more time on things that are uniquely human: critical thinking, negotiations, relationships. But George, being a practitioner, actually doing this stuff in a way that has meaningful impact to business, what do you see as automation? And can you talk a little bit about what you've done at the state of New York?
Yes, let's talk about 3 applications that illustrate that. And one is one you and I did together, and it was for protecting children. What we were trying to do was make sure that if you were an adoptive parent, a foster parent, or worked in a daycare center, you were not a predator adult and should not be next to children. So what that meant is you had to take finger images, you had to run them against New York State criminal justice and the FBI to see if the adult came back with a hit. This all started manual. 30 people, 300 file cabinets. They could not meet their 30-day SLA. So they brought us in, and we brought in IBM, and we worked through a process, and we figured out how to do it. So when it was all said and done, and it used to take 4 months, okay? Remember that, 4 months. Let me back up on that. Why is that important? Because if you're a child looking for a home and you've got to wait 4 months to find out if that person's good, that's heart-rending. So we got it in. We were able to track every single form that we put through, and we changed it from 4 months to 19 hours. We could do it on an overnight. So put your fingerprints in today. We would know tomorrow whether or not you can be next to an adult. That's great for the kids. The bean counters loved it because that meant they could start charging the federal government for adoption services. Okay, that makes them happy. But most importantly, we made children safe, and that's a societal issue. Another one that we did with IBM was automating invoice processing, and that fits public sector and the private sector. 57 state agencies, they all had their own invoice processing system. And it was chaos. They could never tell where their invoices were. They didn't know if they were paid. And more importantly, it hampered small vendors because they were never big enough to get paid in time. So we automated it, like Amy talked. Start to finish, we automated it. Invoices come in via email, 80% of them, except for the 2-foot phone bills that you have to scan. I don't know why, but they still come in huge areas. We process them, we pull off the information, we would track every invoice and know where it was. That was important in New York because after 20 business days, you had to pay interest on the invoice. So suddenly it just settled out and turned a critical financial process into an air traffic control system. And for the small vendor, they could now compete and get paid and have cash flow to survive. In case you wanted to know, the most frequent invoice in the state of New York is from dairies to deliver milk to facilities. I know you wanted to know that. The last one I want to talk about is one that neither of us had a part in, but it's personally very, it hits me at a personal note, and that's the business automation that you did at the Veterans Administration. My dad was a World War II vet, battled to the bulge. He needed VA services. He was constantly hampered in getting services because the paperwork didn't get to where it needed to be. We are talking months. And it's nobody's fault. We can have a whole nother issue about the lack of investment in government services, but the VA, to its credit, reached out to IBM, and the process has been automated. So when paperwork comes through, it gets to where it's supposed to be now in 2 days. or less. And when it used to be months, that was amazing. On the flip side, and we talk about automation freeing up people for other tasks, the VA is stating that 1,000 staff is now available to do other things. And that's important because every organization's got a list of things they can never get to because they don't have the staff. So those are 3 examples of how business automation has made a difference in society and in processes.
It's really great, George. Those are really touching, and you're bringing back some memories, especially in the social services one when we worked together on that and help keep these kids out of the wrong places. It's really, really good. And maybe you could talk a bit about, how did you execute this at such scale? A lot of organizations talk about center of competencies or center of excellence. What does that really mean? Did you have one, and how did it work? How did you do this at the scale you did to make the impact that you had?
Okay. So there's 3 phases to a deployment. There's the whole marketing dance, and then you agree to buy, and then how do you deploy it? How do you operationalize it and deliver on the promises that the sales guys told you could do, salesperson told you could do?
Not a salesperson.
I know you're not. So what I was able to do was create a center of excellence for ECM and business automation. What did that mean? When we consolidated ITS at New York State, we found 8 ECM products in production. You can't support 8 products. You can't get the staff for 1. How are you going to get it for 8? And on top of that, we needed to scale to an enterprise. So our rubric was there was only 1 vendor could do it, and we brought you in and we built our COE around your capabilities. Now, you got to deliver. We all know talk is cheap. You got to deliver every morning in IT. So what we did is we consolidated all the footprints, and I had a tech team of 6 supporting 100,000 users, ECM, every morning. I gave them a challenge. I told them they could have 1 minute of downtime a month. They said, you? So they went 4 years of 100% production uptime. 4 years. So that's the advantage of a COE. If you had 6, 7, or 8 different implementations, you could never have that scale of expertise and focus. Yep, I see it. On the flip side, while we're doing that and we're getting street cred, my other team was a business team. They went and talked to the users. Those people who keep your servers up and running, you don't want them talking to business people. You really don't. Nothing personal, but it's true, and you know that. So we would sit down, and we would talk business process with the client. We would make them understand the cost of their current process, because every time they tell you there's no money to implement a new technology, ask them how much does the current process cost. And you know what you hear? Crickets. They have no idea. So we work to them so they'd understand how much their process cost. And then we just keep literally a pipeline of new applications coming in. So COE, I am bragging at this point, our hard dollar savings on an annual basis was $100 million. 14 people, 12 people supporting 100,000 users. So if you're trying to implement a new technology, build a COE and go from there.
I think that's really great, George. And that notion of scaling a platform and getting the economies of scale through that centralized function that can help everyone be successful. And the linkage with the business, I think, is the most important part, because a lot of times, well, I'm not an IT person, but I talk to clients, and line of business wants to do this, IT saying do that. Like, how do you get the buy-in? And having that relationship is amazing. And I see we're about to get the hook, but I want to have one more question. What does the future of work mean to you? I know a lot of people are worried that jobs are going to go away and the machines are going to take over. I don't know how many Matrix fans are out there. It might happen one day, but we're not there yet. But what do you see as really the future of work in the next 10, 20 years?
So we had the first pandemic in 100 years. We're at a historical inflection point. If you go back, there's a book called Distant Mirror. It talks about the impact of the bubonic plague on Europe. A quarter to 50% of the population died. It broke the back of feudalism, led to guilds, and led to society of today. So what are the lessons that we're learning from our pandemic? There's three. There's anywhere between 10 and 12 million open jobs. 10 to 12 million. What does that mean? People don't want to go back for just any job. After 2 years of being remote, people really don't want to come back to the office, schlepping back 5 days a week in traffic and all the other stuff. They don't. There's a major bank in New York whose staff has told them, good for you, we're not doing that. And nobody wants a 5-day work week anymore. So how do you bundle that all together? That means you need a hybrid model. Hybrid model is good, but if you have manual processes, it doesn't work. I have a user in my user group who had to bring in 100 staff every week during the pandemic to transcribe information from one system to another. You can't do that. You got to digitize all your systems and you have to digitize your content. And nobody's going to work a 5-day work week. I have a son working in France. They've been 35 hours for a while. So we're catching up to the French. So that means whatever non-productive work you have assigned, non-productive task you have assigned to a position, you have to figure out how to squeeze it out and automate it. And that's the challenge. The talent is going to go to the organizations that give them that capability. So you either figure out how to have hybrid systems, figure out how to allow them to do their work in 4 days, or that talent's going somewhere else. And it's already starting to ripple into union contracts. So that's the future.
Thanks, George. It's really great, and I agree. And this book, I didn't know, Distant Mirror, I'm going to actually read that. So I promise this is not a plant, but the gentleman has a question or a comment. Sir.
There's a massive lesson larger than those three combined that we're not learning very well. And that is, how do you create the ability to scale that competes within a virus's ability to scale?
Are we talking an IT virus or a physical virus?
It doesn't matter. They can both scale better than any capabilities we currently have. And if you move from pandemics to climate change, what you have is a situation where every single speech by every single scientist ends with, and we will have to scale this technology in a way that's never been seen before on the planet. So how can AI, intelligent automation, which is so process-oriented, shift over to the things that we don't yet have processes for, and aid the scientists and the politicians who need to come together, and then we need to build the capacity to scale all of those changes in the business environment, way corporations work, way people work with corporations. All of that stuff has to be scaled in ways it's never been seen before. How can we use this technology to upgrade our ability to scale solutions to those things that we don't yet have processes for?
There's a chair right here. That's the challenge. Why are companies telling people to come back to work 5 days a week if we're trying to figure out how to reduce oil? Why aren't we saying you should be hybrid now so we can reduce the cost of oil and reduce inflation? You're right. That will be the challenge. But if you don't have a vision of what you need to face, you'll never face it. So that's a good question, and we should all take it away and think about how can we do those things. You knew there was no answer.
I was like hiding behind this. All right, thank you, George. This is great. Great partnership. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage Bloomberg Intelligence's TMT team lead, senior analyst, and host of Tech Disruptors, Mandeep Singh.
Great. Thank you all. So let me start off with BI, just a quick intro. We are a team within Bloomberg, a team of about 400 people, analysts who cover companies. We talk to pretty much all of the publicly traded companies. And what we try to do is fundamental analysis of the companies. We do financial models and also, get a pulse of the trends and where the future is going in terms of the various sectors. So I lead the technology sector at BI. And what I wanted to do today was really go over metaverse in a way where you can see how far along we have come in terms of the technology and where we are going with regards to some of the most prominent use cases that are emerging. Now, I agree with some of the things that were raised in terms of what is practical, what can be automated, but it's important to kind of take a stock of where we are in terms of technology first. So just to unpack metaverse, which is a very abstract term if you think about it, and people, in my mind, kind of use it very loosely, in terms of what metaverse means. But metaverse is just an evolution of internet, and what internet has done in the past 30 years is made it easy for people to kind of order stuff, e-commerce, automate processes, talk to each other. And so when you think about the foundational elements of metaverse, think of the apps and the website experience. Right now you have a certain way of doing things, right? You open an app, you do it. But then when you think about it from a gamer's perspective, there is that 3D element where you can simulate a screen, and that is where the next phase of the internet or the app-based world or the web economy will have a lot of 3D inbuilt. And I put some numbers because we like to deal with projections and we like to forecast the future. So engineering software right now is growing at about 7%. But when you think about 3D modeling software, and look, this is not new. That's why I said it's an evolution. AutoCAD, AutoCAM, these are softwares that were used in the past for a lot of engineering processes. But what we are doing now with Metaverse is basically using them everywhere with our app-based experience, with our video conferencing software. And that's why it's important to think about that 3D aspect when you're thinking about Metaverse. Then what is the gateway to Metaverse? Because 3D can be seen from the naked eye, right? If you have to think about 3D, and I was thinking about bringing my VR headset for this presentation, but essentially if you have to interact with 3D, and either you have to wear your AR glasses, or you have to have an AR screen where you can touch and play around with it, or a VR headset where you are sort of in a different virtual world. And the technology is there. If any of you have used Oculus, you can see that you can just migrate to this virtual world, which is completely different from where you are right now. And it can be very stimulating in the sense that you can accomplish a lot of tasks because you feel you are physically present over there. So some data to show where the VR and AR applications are most prominent. Gaming. Gaming is the biggest use case for metaverse right now, and that will remain the case. But then when you think about all the social experiences, especially video conferencing, look, I think people are already tired of Zoom time and just staring at each other. And I'm of the view that avatars isn't the answer either. So if I have my avatar in a conference room with my colleagues, people will get bored of that as well. So, but at the same time, a 3D environment for a board meeting or some other meeting that you are having can be a lot more engaging and immersive. And that is where the potential, the technology, the 3D software I mentioned, the VR, AR headset, the form factor will improve. Right now, it's still a bulky headset that everyone has to wear. So that form factor will evolve. I mean, look at where we are with the smartphones, right? It's a lot more slicker. It has a lot more processing power. Same thing will happen with VR and AR. So, and that's why I have this slide, just to give a sense of how many devices are there. When you think about smartphones and gaming consoles and PCs, it just gives you a sense of the total number of devices sold in a year, and we're talking about billions of devices. So a metaverse experience will go across all the form factors, whether you are using your mobile phone or you're using your PC. It has to tie all in. It's not as if if you're using your PC, it will be a different metaverse. The devices have to talk to each other, and that is what an immersive experience means. And the last thing that's very important from a foundational perspective is connectivity. So 5G is almost table stakes. If you have to create a metaverse application, if you have to do a virtual concert, which is one of the use cases of metaverse, that not everyone can attend that concert in person, but if you can attend it using your VR or AR headset, it will be immersive, and that will be a big use case, the live events and ability for people to attend it at a much bigger scale than they are able to do it now. So I do think that will be a big use case beyond gaming, the live concerts, and what's really needed is the connectivity, the 5G, and we have all that. It's not as if we are talking about a futuristic scenario here. So that's really from a foundational perspective. Now let me kind of get into some of the use cases, and since the theme is automation for today, I'll try to highlight some of the things that I do think will be more efficient as a result of all the things I mentioned around the metaverse. So gaming, again, I think I can't stress enough how big the gaming market could become as a result of the metaverse. I mean, gaming was about a $200 billion market, but when you think about all the experiences that gaming can create in terms of from an education perspective, like think of the classroom environment. If you have a metaverse sort of environment where you can really sit down and do things from a practical perspective, that will be a lot more engaging. So education may turn out to be a big use case. And look, I think survey after survey shows that gaming adoption will continue to grow, and people will spend more time. Yes, there is some focus around from the regulators, what sort of negative impact it can have on the development of the younger folks. But at the end of the day, it's definitely something that's more immersive, and it can be controlled. Like you can create controls around how the positive use cases are highlighted more and more. So in fact, I recently hosted the CEO of Unity Software on my podcast, TMT Tech Disruptors. And his point was, look, I mean, there will always be negative points about a technology and how it can be misused. But at the end of the day, it just makes for a much better experience. And you ask any of the gamers who were gaming in a console-based world, and now they're using this metaverse, VR, AR sort of experience, they can attest to it that it is a much better experience. So gaming will morph into a lot new type of use cases, and that is where I do think, from a business model perspective as well, you are going to see a lot more revenue generated from companies that are leveraging that gamification of work, as well as the social media. Think of social media, that's why Facebook has changed its name to Meta, because they realize this is the next iteration of social media. The way we consume it in a feed, text-based way is just not going to be good enough for the future. So they are pivoting to this metaverse look and feel, and it shows up in the numbers. So this is a slide where I do think there are a lot of use cases that you are going to see. So on the retail side, e-commerce will be transformed. I mean, we're talking about virtual malls, and every company having, there are a couple of them out there, Sandbox and Decentraland metaverses, where you can pretty much enter this mall and shop around as if you were actually in the mall, and you can order stuff. So e-commerce will be a lot more engaging as a result of metaverse. Real estate. There's this company, Matterport, that has pretty much created 3D designs of all the kind of houses, and think about buying a house, how stressful it is. And from a metaverse use case perspective, this is one area where they can be very disruptive. Think like how much you can do in terms of looking at the house, the interiors, using your VR headset, that immersive nature of buying a real estate and looking at different houses from inside rather than just going once. It will be transformational, I think, on the real estate side. And then travel and hospitality as well. There are a lot of use cases just around travel, because when you're thinking about travel, you want to know what is in there. When you go to that place, what are the different types of attractions? Guess what? You can see it using the metaverse. So I can go on and on in terms of the potential use cases. And there are companies out there that are building these use cases. So clearly, there are investments being made. And it's a matter of time, because, as I said, the foundational elements are there. So there will be a big services segment attached to all these use cases, and that will transform the work. NFTs, there's so much talk around, non-fungible tokens and digital art. So you can actually create your virtual assets and sell it in a virtual mall. So digital art can be monetized. It wasn't possible before, but NFT has allowed that. And look, some of these things, the tokens, are going to turn out to be fads. But at the end of the day, that's how companies are thinking about it from a business model perspective. I just have this slide around the evolution of e-commerce, because I really think, given the size of the e-commerce market, I mean, we're talking about $4 trillion market here, it just changes everything, and look, smartphones aren't going away. But if you can augment your smartphone with that VR, AR experience and use it to drive e-commerce, which is happening in some cases, but really scale it up, it's a matter of time where people will find this to be more engaging, and they will definitely adopt it. So last use case around factory floor manufacturing. This is huge. I mean, we were discussing robotics and all the factory floor kind of processes. Imagine, instead of getting a database dashboard, you have this real-time experience in terms of the data showing on each of the machines, how it's operating. It's a lot more visual and interactive than looking at a dashboard and getting an alert that this is something that is going wrong in your factory. So the whole point about metaverse is visuals and making it more immersive. And that is what you are going to see more and more. Digital twin, this is another thing that everyone is trying to do that on the industrial side, is you already have a setup, you have a factory. How do you simulate that, create a digital twin and then figure out what are the things that could go wrong? So creating a digital twin is a lot more easier on the metaverse. So I did want to leave you guys with a slide of who the top metaverse players are. On the AR, VR side, the devices, I mean, we know Oculus is pretty big on the VR side. Applications, Roblox, Microsoft, all your large players that are investing in it. 3D design software, Unity is pretty big. Semiconductors, again, you need the chips, the processing power. So connectivity, and then payments. I mean, there will be that aspect about using NFTs and payments. So, and just to summarize everything we discussed, look, I think the key takeaway here is the foundational technologies are there, as well as AI and cloud can do a lot in terms of just bringing it all together and making it user-friendly and making it interactive, and that is what you're going to see going forward. So I know I'm out of time, but I'll be around if anyone has any questions, and thank you for listening.
Please welcome to the stage MassMutual's Head of Technology and Data, Sears Merritt, General Electric's Senior Vice President and Chief Information Officer of Corporate Functions and Capital Technology, Nick Perugini, MasterCard's Chief Data Officer, Joanne Stonier, for a conversation with Bloomberg anchor and reporter, Janet Wu.
Thank you. We have arrived at our final panel, and here we are going to hear from three executives from three major companies on how they used automation to solve problems and improve the experiences of their workforces. Now, interesting to note, as I was preparing for this, all of these companies have innovated massively, but these are not young techs. These are all legacy companies. I don't have to explain to you who they are. MassMutual, founded in 1851, GE, founded 1 year later in 1852, and MasterCard is the relative baby on this stage, founded in 1966. In the first panel, they had ladies first. I decided to put age before beauty, age of the company. So I'm going to start with you, Sears, because we know you're not that old. How does a 171-year-old mutual introduce automation?
Very carefully. When we introduced automation at the company, we took a data-driven, data science-centric approach, and we pulled back and looked across what we think of as the policyholder life cycle and thought about where are those moments or those key points in a business process or a policyholder experience that are going to lead to the most impact, whether that's top line, bottom line, or again from a digital perspective, just making it easier to do business with us. So that's how we started, was literally just pulling back and saying where can we make the most impact and then turning that into a strategy.
Nick, similar question to you. Perhaps on this stage, your company, GE, has transformed the most, and it's about to transform again, in that it will be three companies. So how are you using automation to help in that very difficult process?
There's a lot of work that goes on in a company of our age, and what I would say is it starts with a mindset and a culture. And so for us, we've really embraced lean as a way of thinking about waste elimination. And once you put yourself in that mindset, everything else starts to really fall into place. And then it really is about using the technology as an enabler to make people's jobs more interesting and to get them out of the mundane work that they're doing every day and elevate them. And so we look at this as a mindset, but also taking technology and deploying it to advance the mission that we have at hand.
Joanne, with MasterCard, of course, you implement AI to help improve the experiences of your workforces. But you do something else that is of concern to a lot of people that don't understand this. You are charged with building the ethical outlines around AI in your company.
Yep.
Can you give us an example?
Sure. So when you think about us as the baby on the panel, we've been a data company for quite a while. We make transactions safe, simple, and secure no matter what type they are. And so when you think about our use of AI for fraud, for example, and how we have to monitor all sorts of data across our globe and our network that we operate, we also have to think about, are we using AI in a way that is ethical or responsible as we think about the types of data sources that we're using? Is the data accurate? Is it of good quality? Is it the right information? Is the data sets that we're using, are they biased in some way so that we might get to the wrong answer? So we have to look for bias in the data that we're using. We have to look at bias in the analysis and the analytics and the algorithms that we're creating. So we need a diverse workforce, right? And lots of different perspectives as we come up with those two pieces of the AI methodology. And then we have to look at the output. And we always are doing this, really looking at those outcomes, because they're always going to be, at some level, very individually impactful, right? Even though we're a B2B company, all of our products and solutions really impact all of you as our cardholders, right? And through our banks and customers. So we need a process, and that's what we've put together as an AI governance process, and it really takes everybody from our data designers and data quality experts all the way through to our data scientist community, and then all the way through to our customers as we think of the ecosystem of AI as it gets deployed. Because once AI gets deployed, it begins to learn from itself. And so you really need to make sure that you're really creating AI that's responsible and really thinking through these issues so that when it begins to learn from itself, it's learning the right things, not the wrong things from all the inputs that you create.
Sears, you had referenced the range of business that you do. I want to remind people, of course, you are an insurance company. You also do a range of insurance policies, financial planning, you have annuities. Unless anyone think you are old school, you are a major player in the development of the Boston Seaport, and the company was recently very public about investing in crypto, as your chairman recently told me. You manage a lot of data. How does AI make all of that data easier for you to manage?
Yeah, I think we think about data management, data protection, and how we put AI on top of that data. To deliver the biggest impact to policyholders, whether that's through a better experience, a better price for a product, what have you. So we do that from a marketing perspective, whether that's increasing our ability to convert policyholders from particular campaigns, speeding up the time it takes to actually underwrite a policy. Some of you may have bought a policy in the recent past and had an experience where it took weeks maybe to get that done. At MassMutual, that takes minutes at this point. And that's all sitting on top of the power of AI and our data science models, and most importantly, our data.
All right. Nick, you referenced being lean
Yep.
as a way to improve your workforce, but on this stage, you are the largest company,
Yep.
I believe. Your workforce is still over 200,000 globally. How do you use automation to manage so many people in so many places?
It's a great question, Janet. I'll give you two examples, one from internal in the enterprise and one external in the customer base. On the internal side, it does start with that lean mindset and culture. And one of the things we did last year was we sponsored a Waste Walk Week. And we sat with our functions, 1,400 associates, and we asked them to look at the work that they do, the outcome that they deliver, and how can we either simplify or automate that work. And just in the course of a week, we eliminated over 25,000 non-value added hours. And this was something that our CFO, myself, we co-championed. The second example is on the customer side, where customers in our energy business have outages. Outages should be planned, but they could be unplanned. And when they're unplanned, they hurt. And so we looked at that process, the entire value stream of the process, from material flow to customer calling to field rep deployment, and we leaned it out and we used digitization in the field to help shrink the cycle time by 30%. So these things can drop to the bottom line. It just takes some mindset and some technology to help activate them.
We've been talking today so much about workforce shortages and the problems of hiring people. I have not spoken to a single executive over this past year who has not had that problem. Is there anyone here who does not have open positions and has had no problem hiring? Okay, so Joanne, let's dig into that with you, because you say that you use AI through the entire employee life cycle. So first to attract them, and then more importantly, to retain them. How do you do that?
Sure. So I think this was discussed from many perspectives so far today, but I think we're all facing the challenge of attracting the next generation of workforce. And it is a challenge, but I think many of us are coming to understand that we have to look at the whole person of our employees, and we really need to think about the next generation of workers. And I think one of the previous conversations focused on first, are we looking for the right set of skills, right? So I think we've started to use AI to really look at our position descriptions, right? Are we asking for too much, right? Do we really need all these degrees, number one, in every single job description for a technologist, for a data analyst, for a data scientist? What do we really need in each job? Have we been asking for too much? So we first used AI to actually look at our job descriptions and say, what do we need and where are we also looking? I mentioned the need for diverse talent. We also need a diversity of perspectives. We've just been through a very significant time change with COVID, right? And understanding that we need diverse perspectives if we're going to create the products and solutions for the next generation. We've been talking about automation. We just talked about the metaverse. All of the next generation of products and solutions need diverse perspectives as we begin to merge digital and physical worlds. So why wouldn't we want individuals who have that gaming background to help us think through how does that metaverse merge with the physical world, right? So making sure that you attract young talent into your company as well as mature talent and experienced talent is really important. So looking for the right profiles as you're bringing together new teams, we're using AI to actually create the teams of the future. So that's part of our talent attraction strategy, as well as, of course, looking at where are we sourcing our talent. I know a lot of organizations were trying to attract more and more diverse talent around the globe from different universities like HSBU's, historically black colleges, different organizations, so that we can understand what kind of talent is out there that we haven't maybe historically attracted. But on the retention front, we also are going through a time of great change in the workforce, right? And all of us have been talking about that. And we've also started asking our employees, what is it that you want in the employment now? And so we've started to do things, not only kind of flexible schedules, but we've started doing things like a flexible work opportunity of 4 weeks from work from anywhere. So we can give our employees the opportunity to not only take their vacation time, but if they need that extended time with their families over the summer, work at the lake house, work at the beach house, work from the mountains if you want, because we know that it works, right? We've been working from anywhere. We also we've been using AI to create what we call, I'm sorry, I just want to make sure I have it right, Unlocked, which is a training opportunity for you to pursue different paths in the company. So if you're in legal right now, but you want to do a stint in technology or an audit, you have a chance to do that. And then we also have a cultural health index that helps us look at our company from the outside in and the inside out. And we're using AI to really enrich the data that we're using to actually assess ourselves as we try to figure out what does employment look like into the future. So those are some of the ways we're doing it.
We are going to have to huddle with Mandeep to figure out how your employers are going to work remotely from their beach house in the metaverse.
I
still
know.
like to figure
I know.
that
The
out.
metaverse is
I
a
don't
whole other
quite get it,
conversation.
but
I agree.
need
I
an
agree with
Oculus.
goggles and the headsets and the whole bit. But they already are. Some of that's already happening, but there's more to come for sure.
So we're watching companies having to put much more effort to attract employees, to attract customers, seers. I think having a policy underwritten in 5 minutes is a great way to attract customers. But how else are you using automation to attract customers and make sure they are getting what they need from your company?
Yeah, so we've spent a lot of time thinking about that problem. So kind of starting at the top of the funnel, right? What we're really trying to do is find people that are interested in our products and services at the right time. And once we do that, we want to introduce them to those services through the right channel of engagement that they're most likely to want to engage in the first place, whether that's digital or talking to an advisor. So we've built out a pretty comprehensive platform that enables our marketing and field ambassadors and advisors to take advantage of those capabilities. We've got AI systems kind of, again, at the top of the funnel that speed up our ability to run marketing campaigns and do that demand generation. Once we've done that, we then have algorithms and systems that we use to match those potential policyholders with advisors and products and services that they're most likely to want to purchase. So it's been a long journey, but it's had some tremendous impact for our policyholders.
Thank you so much. Nick, like MassMutual, and perhaps even more so, you have such a wide range of businesses that sit under GE. This is sort of an open question. Are there certain problems that you had to use AI to fix that wouldn't have been fixed any other way?
You know, we have a lot of diverse data in the company, much like the other two colleagues sitting next to me. What I would say is that a lot of it comes down to information that runs our supply chain, our factories, so that we can give people insight into purchasing, but then also on the operational side, how do we do better forecasting? And so a lot of what we use AI and automation for is, quite frankly, to take work that the humans that our analysts and associates were doing and try to really instill that in the organization and bring them up. And so a lot of what we talk about is the fact that we want to make work fun more. Like we want people to do the work that's interesting to them. So how do we deploy these technologies to either provide visibility into forecasting, into S&OP, into supply chain, so that we can then have people really focus on the challenging questions at hand, running our businesses and really thinking about the next several years.
I want to ask all three of you a question, and just a heads up, I'll start with you, Joanne, first, because work has changed so much in the last 2 years. We were talking about catching up to the French with that 35-hour work week or the 4-day work week, but in reality, everyone has gone more remote, except for perhaps television and radio anchors. So how do you use AI to help people feel connected to your companies? Because you are not actually seeing them in person the way that we are delightfully seeing each other today. So Joanne, let me start with you first. Some of the new things that you had to implement in the last 2 years to keep your workforce connected and working, optimally together.
So I think we have seen a great transformation, and I think early days, I think everybody tried those Zoom happy hours. Anybody for a Zoom happy hour? No, not so much anymore, right? I think everybody tried that. We tried so many different remote activities. I did a cooking class with my team remotely. We did a murder mystery remotely, right? And so there are ways to do things remote that are still somewhat fun, but I would argue that coming back together is still a whole lot more fun to build culture. And so we are back in the office a couple of days a week. And what we're being asked to do as leaders is find ways to get your team together so that the best of hybrid, which is really what we're really about right now, can really happen. And so we are having get-togethers, but the idea is to have meaningful time together, because the harder part is in a 2-day or 3-day work week when you're in person, you don't have your whole team together. And I think that's the challenge of the now. So what we're trying to do at MasterCard is we've asked leaders to come up with the reasons for teams to be together for a purpose, right? Not just for an offsite meeting, but for me as a data officer, we do a lot of data flow charts, right? And so we have found that, yes, you can use lots of different tools to do it remotely, but it's a whole lot more fun to do the whiteboarding together. So when we have design sessions, we actually bring people in and we bring people together. And then we actually then broadcast those sessions, we record them, and then we send them out to the team. And so that is actually another way to then engage our partners, because then other colleagues will show that at a meeting, and then we get their reactions. And so then what we do is we then can bring people in to begin to kind of snowball that. But I do think we're at a really cultural moment of how do we get people to stick together, be together, and then also really bring them in for the reason that we all like to work, which is those serendipitous moments of, oh, I just saw you and I forgot that I need to talk to you about this project because it would be fabulous if we could innovate together. And it's that innovation moment that I think we have to figure out that isn't the scripted, oh, I need 30 minutes on your calendar. And I think that's where we're still working on that. I don't know that I have the answer for everybody in the room.
Nick, you already had a workforce that was all over the place, so you maybe had a head start in that. But again, with the pandemic, with so many different businesses and teams, again, that really had to connect in order to move forward, are there things that you also introduced in the last 2 years?
Ours Ours is almost multi-layered. So there were 2 or 3 layers. What I'd say at the foundational layer, we had to transition 200,000 from office to field or home. And that took everything from infrastructure to a view of cyber to networks to capabilities. As you moved up the stack, software and connectivity that helped people do their work. But then really the third one, which was I think the biggest accelerator, was the mindset that all of our employees had to take, where the pandemic forced them into a accelerated evolution. It forced them into a world where they had to ultimately work in a virtual environment. And so when we take those 3 layers, what we found is that our employees rose to the challenge, and much like Joanne, I mean, they figured the way to work out, and now we're getting back into that mode. But I would tell you is that the pandemic, some good things did come out of it as we think of the accelerants in digital technology.
Nick, Sears, very interesting. Your company had planned a massive new headquarters here in the Seaport before the pandemic, and I say co-headquarters because you're still formally headquartered in Springfield. And I remember again talking to your chairman about the challenge of designing this very expensive building, breaking ground, having it built during the pandemic, and then him saying, similar to what Joanne had referred to, that it has now become a destination for your employees because you are everywhere, and this will still be a way to connect physically in the future. So instead of being tethered to this place every day, you will actually come with excitement to meet other people. But that being said, you already had the challenge of employees split between 2 places in Massachusetts, including people everywhere else. So I want to ask you the same question about some of the things that you did to ensure that people stayed connected within MassMutual during these very challenging last 2 years.
Yeah, I think, you know, we like everybody, we had to act quickly. So I think the good news was we realized as an organization that we were already hybrid, and we just didn't know it. We had people in offices all over the world. I mean, we've got a couple obviously in Massachusetts, but we're a global company. So what we realized was we had a lot of the core capabilities and technologies at our fingertips. Teams just had to really think about how to use them purposefully and productively as we were operating remotely. And then as we get closer to today and thinking about living in this hybrid world, I think the comments that Joanne made earlier around connecting with purpose were so spot on. I think getting people in a room, a conference room, you know, a setting like this, and really making them be purposeful with what they want to get out of those discussions is what brings people back to the office. And we've actually seen some really great transformation just down at our Seaport office and out in Springfield as well when we do that. The big challenge now is how do we actually make the physical environments of our buildings look and feel as productive as the virtual ones that we're now currently used to operating in over these last 2 years. So we're thinking about how to use AI technologies or just enabling new features in telecommunications software, camera software, and other collaboration tools.
We are sadly down to my final question. And sir, you asked such great questions, but we're going to have to ask it personally after this because I'm running out of time. There is something that I wanted to ask all 3 of you. Again, I introduced you as working for legacy companies. You are also not new employees at your company. You have been there for a long time, which means when you all join your companies, the terms AI and automation never came up in a discussion, and also your positions did not exist, not even as an idea. So again, I want to ask all of you, starting with Joanne, how did you upscale as your company had to upscale?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. So it's interesting, right? MasterCard has been on a transformation journey ever since I joined the firm. I joined the firm as the first chief privacy officer, actually, because the firm wanted to start using data as a form of innovation. And they wanted to do it in a responsible manner, and they knew that there were laws out there that they needed to comply with. And I joined at pretty much at the same time as our former CEO, Ajay Banga. And we had lots of conversations about how do we do this, how do we service, KeyBank is in the room, and many of our banks are in the room, and how do we do that in a way that's going to kind of foster the data innovation that was going to be needed by so many of our banks, and then ultimately merchants and governments and others. And so it's been a journey, I think. I don't think I could have foreseen the need for the CDO, but as we were going through things like all of the compliance that is now out there with data and innovation, what happened was I was building the systems as the privacy officer, and I kept saying, you know, we really need somebody in charge of data. And everybody kept patting me on the head and saying, yeah, we do. And little did I know they were going to say, yes, you should do that job. But I think sometimes innovation occurs all around you, and I do like to build new things. And so I think for what I do tell people who work for me and other colleagues is that no skill set ever goes to waste. We are living in amazing times where all sorts of new things are going to happen, and we've been talking about AR and augmented reality and virtual reality. And I think even those things are going to help us in the workforce of the future and how we all work together and interact. And so just keep learning. I had a mentor once tell me, work at the margins of your ignorance and you will never go wrong, meaning always learn more. And so that's from Harvey Golub. And so I share that with all of you.
I recently interviewed one of the co-founders of Ginkgo Bioworks, and she said, I am super qualified for my job a year ago.
Yeah, that's
works.
how
I always feel.
That
I'm
works
always
for
constantly
me.
learning, catching up, and I'm super qualified.
Work at the margins of your ignorance.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. That's about right.
Nick, you have held a lot of positions at GE.
I have. I've been proudly at GE since 1999. I say it starts with a purpose, a passion, and then prioritization. And the reality is like GE is an amazing company. The purpose of helping to cure, empower, and transport people around the world is one that just motivates me and has continued to evolve throughout the last 20, 25 years. I'd say the passion is the people and the products are one that really energize and excite you, but it's really the prioritization. I think if you take any one thing, you can break it down into something which is manageable and deliverable. And I think that's where automation comes in. If you take it and make it a priority to make people's jobs better, you can get it done.
Sears, working at a 171-year-old company, we know you were not there in the beginning days. So how did you finally upscale yourself to keep up with the innovation you need to do in order for a company like MassMutual to stay relevant?
Yeah, I think for me and my team and really the rest of the organization, I think the comments around operating at the margins of ignorance is really insightful. For us, it's being strategic about where those margins are. So what are the skills that we think we need to acquire, whether as an individual, a leader, teams, that are going to benefit the policyholder, benefit the company, help us compete more effectively. We do that every day, right? We ask those kinds of questions as a team and then turn those into actions that, again, we either take as leaders or that we offer to our employees to grow themselves.
Thank you so much. Really enjoyed this conversation. Let's thank our panel. Thank you so much. We have come to the end of this event. Thank you so much for joining us for this briefing on intelligent automation, creating the workforce of the future. We hope you enjoyed all the conversations. Big thank you to all the speakers and the moderators. So interesting. We want to again thank our sponsor, IBM, for making this summit possible. If you'd like more information from our sponsors, just please visit the resources tab on the event website. We are so honored. We wanted to keep this intimate so you could all have a chance to speak with each other, and it was joyful for me to see everyone having to bring in extra chairs and people standing. So we appreciate your patience and showing up in person. We want to thank you for being an engaged audience. We know a lot of people are watching from everywhere, and especially all of you in the room. To watch any part of this event, just return to BloombergLive.com and to view on demand. And to let you know, we will be in Raleigh, North Carolina on May 25th for another in-person briefing on intelligent automation. Before you go, my colleague Kelly has a final announcement and an invitation for you.
Thank you, Janet, and thank you again to everyone for joining us today. Right after this briefing, IBM partner Intellective is hosting a networking luncheon at Sam Adams Tap Room over on State Street. Tom Bishop is one of our hosts, and he will be standing by the registration desk. So everyone here is invited to attend that luncheon. Please see Tom Bishop at the registration desk if you'd like to join them. So thank you again, everybody.
Great. Thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. These are fantastic and fun. I enjoyed. It really helps to do like pre-conversations with everyone about how it is, and it's just.
No, I love the way you brought in their history and weave that into the story of automation today. It's really great. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure.
Yeah.
I'd love to do it anytime.
Well, see you in Raleigh.
Okay.
Now we just need to make sure everyone gets to the round table.
Yes. Okay. They know who they are. We'll from them.
That's okay.